have an expert that just comes on and just teaches you something new, this is what the conversation was today with Julie Pham. We talked about organizations and how important it is to have respect and curiosity in organizations, and what actually does curiosity and respect mean, because we think we know what the word is, right? Oh yeah, you respect me, I respect you. But it's deeper than that. And she takes you down what this means and what it looks like in an organization and how to bring it in so that you have higher retention, so that people are aligned with your vision and mission, so that you guys can connect and understand each other. If you are running an organization, if you're a CEO or even a solopreneur that's going to build their business, this is the episode for you. You're going to really, really love all of the gems in this. What's up, y'all? Neena here. How are you? Well, today you guys are in for a treat. On today's episode of Straight Talk, I want to talk to Dr. Julie Pham. Now, she's a powerhouse, okay? And she is in curiosity and community building, and she's the founder and CEO of CuriosityBased. I said that wrong. She is a CEO of CuriosityBased, where she teaches organizations to turn their meh meetings into meaningful dialogues. And I'm really excited about that. Now, Dr. Pham is also a best-selling author of The 7 Forms of Respect, showing us that respect isn't just nice to have, but it comes with more flavors than a gourmet ice cream shop. I freaking love everything about her. Now, what I love about this is, Julie, I'm so glad you're here. I worked, we all work in corporate. We all have these things, right? And sometimes I felt like an outlier when I tried to talk to people about, dignity, respect, speaking to people in a certain way, blah, blah, blah. It was almost like I got like the eyes, like, shut up, Neena, but I guess it's because that's the coach side of me, maybe, that just saw some things that I thought could have been improved. So I'm really, really, really glad you're here, because a lot of our listeners are leaders and CEOs and, solopreneurs, things like that. So this is your audience, Julie. So welcome to Straight Talk. How are you?
I'm doing good. And Neena, I'm super excited for this conversation. I'm a fan of your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I love doing what I do, and I love meeting people like you who are experts in their field, and then just drop so many wonderful things along the way for our audience to pick up and understand. Now, one of the things that I'm really super proud of with this podcast is a lot of people that have come on my show have actually worked with people who listen to the show. And I think what else is there to do, right? Like, that is just amazing. So, Julie, before we get into all of that, I do want to know more about you. That's why my intro was so short. I want to know more. So who are you, woman? Who are you?
All right. So my background, a really important part of my identity is I'm a Vietnamese boat person. So I came to with my parents as boat people from communist Vietnam.
Wow.
And they founded the first privately owned Vietnamese newspaper in the Pacific Northwest. I share this because I think of my parents as hustlers among hustlers. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial community, very tight-knit. And then I even though I grew up with the newspaper, I decided to become an academic. I got my PhD in history. I decided I didn't want to stay in academia. And I came back to Seattle in 2008 at the start of the Great Recession to run the newspaper. And that's where I got my real life MBA, running the newspaper. After 3 years working with 8 people, half of them had the same last name as me. It's like, okay, I need to go to a bigger org. And then I worked in tech for the next 9 years. Wow. And then I felt called to start my own company, CuriosityBased, in the middle of the pandemic. And
you like doing things. You like doing things in the middle of a world problem.
I know. And this is where I really think of myself as a scrappy entrepreneur. And I love to help people practice curiosity in the world, starting in the workplace, because that's where we spend most of our waking hours.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you had a lot of curiosity going on working with family, right? Because that's always a curious thing.
Oh my gosh, Neena, we have to pause and go, wait a minute, why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? And yes, and I think that we have to be so much more stretchy in our home life than our
Yeah.
work life.
Yeah,
So,
that's so true. But that's really cool, though. My hat goes off to your parents. That's not an easy thing to do. And to come to an entirely new, different country, different culture, different language, different everything, but then find your niche, right? Like
mhm,
to go and start something like that is huge. That's
mhm,
huge because most people, I think, and I shouldn't say most people, but because I've noticed I have a lot of friends who are immigrants, right? A lot of friends
mhm,
from different places, all different places around the world. That's what I love about the United States is that we have so many people from so many different places. And they're very successful. They're
mhm,
very successful. They just
mhm,
are. And most of people that I know who are Americans sometimes are not. And I think it's because you get complacent
mhm.
in what you have, right? And so your family fled from something and they decided to make something out of it. That's huge, Julie. Wow, that's so cool. That is so cool. And I love that you came from that background because it made you the hustler you are today, right?
Mhm,
Oh,
absolutely.
you're always starting things in the middle of a recession, a pandemic, or something, right? That's so funny. So, talk to me about when you got into tech and all that, and you left the family business, got into tech and everything. Why the curiosity base though? What was happening in your
Mhm.
career, in your life that this was important to you?
Well, so being in Seattle, Seattle has been growing really fast because of the tech boom, and there's a lot of
Yeah,
resentment against tech workers and just, "Oh, those Amazonians, those techies." And
right.
so I decided to create
We
a
need them. We need
cross-sector
them.
I decided to create a cross-sector collaboration fellowship, bringing together people from different sectors, from tech, from the private sector,
Oh,
government, and
smart.
nonprofits. And so, I think that there are lots of different ways to think about diversity, and
Yeah,
and what I discovered was because we challenged them to create a project with basically no funding on a short period of time, and
of
and
course.
some people really thrived and some people really struggled. And
Mm,
what I discovered was the people who really struggled were the ones who were so focused on getting a particular outcome. They're
mhm,
like, it
mhm.
has to look like this. And the people who were thriving were just, wow, look at what I learned. We created something out of nothing. I had no
Wow,
idea. And so after a few cohorts, I realized I identified curiosity. And that was
that's
the
so
key. And
cool.
so what I love doing is helping organizations become learning organizations because learning doesn't stop at school. In fact, we spend way more time in our career than we ever do in our school life. And so
100%.
actually employers have an opportunity to create and nurture these places where people feel that they can continue to learn and feel, and if they feel that they are invested in, and then they will invest and give back to the company.
Mhm,
Otherwise,
mhm,
Nina,
mhm.
otherwise it's a very transactional relationship. It can feel, I only hire you for your expertise and I'm extracting labor from you, and it's a transaction
Yeah.
versus I'm investing in you and you're going to invest in me, and there's reciprocity.
And there's such a difference in that, Julie. Oh my gosh, because when I've worked with a team that we are, and I've always been like this anyway, because I'm a very curious person. So I've always been like an outlier, always like you're getting in trouble in school because I was always curious about why and how did you and blah blah blah. The teacher's like, shut up and sit down, that type of thing. But I remember, when I had my teams and I'd be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and I want to do this amazing event and project, and I want everybody's ideas. So let's go. The most beautiful things would come out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it would be the best event we ever had, that kind of thing, because of everybody's involvement, plus their excitement of having their voices heard, right, Julie? I think that's a part of it too. It's interesting. I was reading something, I think it was yesterday, and you like him or hate him, Elon Musk is starting a school, Montessori school in Texas, and he's making the school STEM,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all about curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about curiosity for the kids. It's for the kids to be curious and invent things. And I thought that was such a cool way to look at, education. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I love that you do that and that you go in and you're helping them understand that they should be learning and growing. And not only that, Julie, and you please stop me if I'm wrong, but I think the retention is longer when you do that too. Are you noticing that in your
Yes.
organizations? Yeah.
Yes. And I want to actually stress that I think we can all theoretically say, hey, I'm a curious person. I think curiosity is important. And so we can agree on the why. I think
Yeah.
where people really struggle is how do we do that? And
Yeah.
also how to admit when it's hard. And so
Yeah.
that's what I actually, I describe curiosity as a practice. And so a lot of people describe it as a trait. You either have it or you don't. I am or you're not. And I think of it
Mm.
as a practice, which means sometimes I don't want to practice it. I
Right.
don't want to practice curiosity. I know my idea is right, right?
Right.
And why do we have
Right.
to have this discussion again?
Right.
And
Right.
70% of people feel that they can't ask questions at work. And
That's true.
so
That is
so
true.
this is, and I'm interested in why is that? What creates the conditions? Actually, through working with some clients, I identified reasons why people don't want to ask questions. They feel fear asking questions. And that's the
Mm.
part where we delve into not let's do it. It's actually when it's hard. That's what we
Yeah.
got to talk about.
Yeah.
And Neena, you asked me about retention. So definitely, I think the practice of curiosity has three elements. There's self-awareness, relationship building, and clear communication. So that's self-awareness, that's inward curiosity. How do I be
Yeah.
curious about myself? The second one is relationship building. So how do I be curious about you, Neena? And then also how do I share myself with you so you can
Mhm.
react and we're having
Mhm.
this reciprocity? That's relationship building. And the third is clear communication. How do I listen to understand? How do I ask questions when I don't? And how do I tell specific examples and
So
stories
good.
instead of being abstract? So going to the retention part, that I think is really centered in relationship building. And because people will leave jobs they love if they don't feel connected to the people they work with. And people
Yeah.
will stay in jobs. Not only, the work is like, but I love these people.
Yeah.
And so
I
that's why
I've
it matters
experienced both.
so
So
much.
true.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I've learned now that we just finished our fourth year of business is we work with organizations who want to invest in that relationship building and who believe it matters versus those who are like, I can pay top dollar and I just need you to do the work. And I don't really care if you feel connected to other people.
Well, your job isn't easy, Julie, because that's hard, right? I'm
Mhm.
starting to think of like different organizations I've worked with in my life, and um, sometimes the CEO is just not budging, right?
Mhm.
So how are you? Okay, so there's a lot of CEOs that listen to the show, a lot of like entrepreneurs, things like that. So how do you give them a tip or two on how they can at least recognize that maybe they're shutting off the voices of their people, maybe,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
or they're
Mhm.
not being curious enough or flexible. So give us some tools that they can take away.
Yeah, so actually I'll talk about the tool, my framework, seven forms of respect, which is
Yeah, let's talk about it.
essentially, it's actually about how to be curious about respect. So when people hear the title, they're just, oh, it's going to be like seven habits of highly effective people. And these are seven forms that you must have to be respectful. I'm like, no, it's more like five love languages.
Right.
So, and it's about shifting the dialogue from, because the way we talk about respect now is respect versus disrespect.
Mhm,
If I don't
mhm.
get respect in the way that I want, then it's disrespect.
Yeah.
And we talk about it as if it's fixed and universal. But actually, in my research, it's relative, it's subjective, it's dynamic, and it's contradictory.
Right, right, right.
So getting to your question of, well, how can CEOs encourage this is just for them to, so oftentimes uh, what CEOs prefer, that's the norm, right? It's just like, it's do what I do, not what I say I do what I do.
Right. Right.
And so then it's just how do we actually have a conversation about what are the forms of respect that we need to prioritize here? First, let's talk about what is being prioritized. What are we currently doing? And then
Right.
oftentimes I see CEOs, oh, well, what a coincidence. What we're doing is also my personal preferences, right? And so I'm just, is that, are people doing what you are setting as the norm? And is that actually the best thing to do to support the nature of the work?
Right, right,
And that
right.
when you can shift from, oh, it's CEO's preferences to, oh, this is actually what's best for us as an org. So, for example, a lot of people say punctuality is important, but if you're running an emergency room, punctuality is not, who gets there on time is not important. It's actually about who needs the most care, right?
Right,
So you
right,
have
right.
to think about what do you actually need to prioritize. And so I think the first thing is recognizing, oh, are my personal preferences setting the norm? And how do I let go of that and have this open discussion about what the org needs? And that also, I think a lot of times when people talk about how do we create belonging, it's just,
Yeah.
well, what do you like? And, there are all these wonderful personality, like Enneagram,
Yeah. I had to do
Myers-Briggs and
those.
stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
DISC and
yeah.
all those. But what those do is, oh, well, what does Neena like? I always have to remember Neena's preferences,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, girl. And I have
Versus,
ADHD, so I
yeah,
couldn't remember
right,
what
right.
anybody liked.
So I'll just say this. I think of respect in an organization lives in layers. And so I'm going to use the analogy of language. So the CEO, leadership team, they set the norms. That's the national language. And then there are these different departments. Say in a tech company, there's engineering, there's marketing, there's finance, there's customer
Right.
service. They have their own functions, they have their own leaders.
Yep.
Those are what they're speaking as the regional dialects.
Right.
And then there's
That's a
me.
great way to put
I've
it.
got I have my own preferences. But people who can do best in an org are those who are multilingual, who realize that we have to flex. And so when the leadership is setting that national language, they have to do something that's just not what, oh, this is the aggregate of what everyone likes. No, this is actually what makes sense for the nature of our work and for our mission and our purpose,
Mhm,
even if
mhm.
that's not what I personally like. So I'll just share, I personally don't prioritize information. It's just, I don't. But in my small company where we've got 5 people, I have to prioritize information because we are remote, we are small, we
Right.
need to give a lot of information. So I have to suppress what I personally like
Right,
for the
right.
good of the team.
Right, right. But Julie, that's like so you gotta for me, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong as well. I just feel like that is the hardest piece is going to be the CEO or the leader of that organization because
Mhm,
now thinking about a previous organization whom I loved, but it was very much top heavy, right? So
mhm,
it was hard to ask questions or to be seen as you're being a nuisance for asking questions. And so I think that's why we need people like you, Julie, because you're going to have to go into the organization and rearrange the whole thought process, right? Because
mhm,
it's not just now the leader. Now they're going to look at him or her suspicious because she's acting like she really wants to know what we want to say, but I don't think so, right?
mhm,
So this is where you come in. So tell me when you come into this organization, right? So now a CEO right now is listening,
mhm,
and it's like, this makes so much sense and I want my organization to grow. And one of the biggest things that an organization pays for is retraining.
mhm.
So let's keep the good people there instead of having to retrain because this open door is always somebody's leaving, right? And I think that can also cause a CEO to get a little bit more rigid because they get a little bit more like, oh my God, another person or another good person or. So
Mhm.
talk to me about when you walk in. So somebody calls you, you're coming in. What's the process? What are you doing with these organizations?
So we either will work first with the leadership team, or depending on the size, we could work with the entire organization. And I do a lot of polling. I do a lot of just these real-time surveys. And so one of the questions I like to ask is what causes misalignment around a shared understanding of respect here in this
Mhm,
organization.
mhm,
And
mhm.
so I'll ask, is it lack of clarity from leadership, lack of communication tools, generational differences, cultural differences, functional differences?
Do people answer that honestly?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they do.
Okay,
And because
good.
it's all polling and we control it, right? So
Okay,
there,
good, good,
and
good.
it's a real-time polling.
Mhm, mhm,
It's real-time
mhm.
polling. And so, Nina, it is hard to get employee engagement surveys filled.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we're
That's what I'm
we're
asking.
doing
I was like,
yeah,
I
no, no,
don't know if
no.
they're answering. Yeah.
We are doing it live in the session. So as we are doing this
Okay.
learning experience, after we've said, "Hey, we've helped them understand that respect is relative." That's the first thing we have to demystify and debunk for people.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
once we do that, then we can ask, okay, well, because people have to get away from feeling, oh, there's a right or wrong answer, and I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that gets in the way of curiosity because they're so afraid of being wrong.
Yep.
So we'll ask that. Then we ask, hey, what are examples of respect and disrespect here? And when we work with a smaller team, we'll say, what are existing top ranked forms of respect that are practiced here? What are the ideal? Let's talk about that. Let's talk
Right.
about the function of the work. And all of this is really, how do we set priorities, not values? I prefer using the word priorities over values. And the
Okay.
reason why is because priorities recognize things are dynamic.
Mhm.
And we can have these shared values, but values are something we always have. And priorities recognizes things are
Ah,
dynamic.
it's a great way
And
to see it.
yeah, and so then it's like, and what that means is people, it's not that I don't care about all of these 7 forms. It's just this is what we have to prioritize. And also even helping people maybe if there's it's you have to recognize where the company is right now. So if you're an early
Right,
stage
right.
startup, it's going to be different from you. If you've been around for 20 years, if you are 5 people versus 50,000 people,
Mhm,
where you
mhm.
need a lot of processes. So kind of being able to articulate why do we do what we do so that then employees feel they have an understanding versus, oh, it's just coming down as this corporate
Yeah, yeah,
mandate. And so to
yeah.
have discussions about it and then um and also to share stories versus to say this is respectful. So I'll give you another example. Punctuality. You'd say, oh, punctuality is important. Why is it important? Because it's respectful. Well, why is it respectful? Because that's what you're supposed to do. People have got to talk about and articulate these are the consequences if we don't do it. This
Okay.
is what's happened in the past.
Mhm, mhm.
This is the we weren't able to finish on time, and then all of these things got delayed, and that caused this trickle down effect. And to be able to tell it specific examples and stories versus like just do it, which no one likes to just be told
Exactly.
what to
Yeah,
do. So
yeah.
Neena, yeah, that's how we do a lot of collection, and that's actually something that our clients love, collection of that data, because
Yeah.
it's so hard for them to get on their own, and then it provokes conversation. And also the other thing we really like to do is this is the word respect or the word curiosity. People think I know that word. I know that word. We take for granted what the definition is. And
Right,
we actually encourage them, no, think critically. What does that mean here? What are the
right.
stories that uphold that definition?
So good. Yeah. That's so good because it makes you pause and think about why you're there or why you're running it, right? Because you're speaking
Mhm.
to all the organization in so many different levels. And I'm just curious, like when when a conflict pops up, because it will, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we're human, it does.
Mhm, mhm.
When can we flip it though? That to put that into a curiosity driven conversation instead of the blame game. How do
Oh,
we flip
Nina,
that?
thank you. I love that question. Okay. So basically it's about to approach it with curiosity. And so people sometimes say, oh, you have to assume good intent. I actually don't believe in just assuming good intent
Mm.
because the difference between good intent and bad intent is I like you or I don't like you. I trust
Mhm.
you or I don't trust you.
It's
And then
good.
I will assign all these reasons and stories to whatever what I think your
Your
intention was.
intent is.
Because
That's so
Nina,
true.
if it's like, oh, I trust you, Nina didn't mean to send me a reminder on how to do my thing, even though if someone else did it, I'd think that's super micromanaging.
That's so true.
Right. And so
Julie, that's so true.
and so basically to slow down and to ask. And so this is I said self-awareness is the first element of practicing curiosity, is I need to be clear on if I feel disrespected, why. And so
Mhm.
I've got a rubber band here. People when they talk about respect, they talk about the golden rule, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yes, uh-huh.
And the thing about that is what if they don't want to be treated the way you want to be treated?
Right.
Right? And
So
then there's the
good.
platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want to be treated. But what if you don't want to treat them the way they want to be treated?
Right.
And so there's what I call the rubber band rule. And so with the rubber band rule, what it is, it's like we're stretchy. Nina, I know you like that. And even though I'm kind of ambivalent, I'll stretch for you because I want to show
Uh-huh.
you respect. And think
Right.
about how often we're doing that for people.
Mhm,
We're
mhm,
stretching
mhm.
and stretching. I don't really like it, but it's not that big of a deal. And we might even convince ourselves it's all right. But over time, what happens when we stretch and stretch and stretch? We
Right,
snap like a rubber
right.
band. So that is about knowing what are my breaking points. I got to know that for myself before I can expect
So
anyone
good.
else to. And
Mhm.
we were talking earlier, we can be way more stretchy at home than at work,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
maybe it depends on the context. So, but my point here is I first have to practice inward curiosity. and I have to be clear so that I can then go into that conversation with someone and practice curiosity with them.
That is
Because if
so
I am
good.
not clear in my mind of why this is bothering me, and so we have a structure, the acronym is CAFA, CAFA, and it's basically it's context, recap the context of the situation. Action is, hey, what that person did that bothered me.
Mhm.
Feeling is, this is how I feel about it, which actually makes it more personal than saying just the impact. Just
Yeah.
like, hey, I felt confused, I felt disappointed, I felt hurt, I felt embarrassed. And then ask is to ask questions about their intentions. And sometimes the first ask is actually just permission. Can we talk about it?
Mhm, mhm,
Are you open to talking
mhm.
about it? Are you open to talking about it now? Because maybe someone is, but right, you just put them in a really bad time, or they need time to process. They just heard you and they need some time to
Yeah.
process what you said.
Yeah.
And so then, because I've had situations where I realize if I then ask a question, it's like, I want to have a conversation about this. I'm not just telling you and then expecting you to react, because what we're trying to do is move away from reaction like this. It's like, no, how do we have a conversation? How do we have engagement?
Yeah. You know, you're speaking a lot too about just introspection
Mm-hmm.
and, self-awareness. I think that's important, for us to also start there, especially when you start to get into leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's so much I had to learn as I was, growing up in corporate and management and all that, and then directorship, and you realize, you can't behave the same way you were behaving as an employee when you're a manager, or as a manager when you're, a leader, as a leader, you're a director, whatever as a C-suite, whatever, everything changes. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering, do you have like, I mean, I know you just talked about the, like breaking things down and all of that. I'm just wondering if there's like one tiny first step that people could take right now that will help them to be more empathetic, more respectful to one another. Like something that we can, like, remember, oh, Julie said, right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
just wondering if there's something we can do right now that to become more curious, more empathetic, more respectful human beings.
Mm-hmm. So anytime, so I think the pause is really big. And to then ask yourself, maybe asking yourself silently this question if you're feeling disrespected. There are two questions. First is, if I'm going to engage in a conversation with someone, do I want that person to learn from me? Yeah, I do, because I got a
Uh-huh.
lot to teach them.
Right.
And the second question is, am I willing to learn from them?
Oh, good. Yeah, that's
And
good.
asking yourself that question. And then here's the thing, we can all perform listening,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
don't go into that. Don't go in if you can't truly feel like I'm willing, because sometimes that can hurt the relationship.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I had with a colleague, we were misunderstanding each other for months. And part of me, sometimes I am so stretchy, I don't know my breaking point until I've just snapped and then I'm
Oh,
recovering
okay.
from it.
Yeah.
But this is why it's a practice. So it's
That's
not
most of us,
perfect.
Julie. That's
Yeah,
most of
yeah,
us.
right, right. And it's a practice and it's not perfect. And then it's like, oh, and then it's like, that's not the reaction I expected. I have to ask myself again, what's
Mm,
happening here? So um, I think forgiving yourself. Okay, Nina, you said one thing. Forgive yourself. Give yourself
yeah,
grace
yeah, yeah.
and give yourself space to practice and think of it as a practice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And, and also remember that you're just human. Like,
Mhm,
honestly, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, tons of
mhm,
them. And also I don't know, I own up to them. When I make mistakes, I own up to it. And I'll tell, I used to tell my team, I'm like, listen, I made a big mistake here.
mhm,
I misjudged this, or I did this, or I did that. The respect that I ended up getting was so good that our
mhm,
teams were together for like, I was in the organization like close to 9 years. Most of my team was with me for about 7 years.
mhm,
So they stayed with me for a very long time. And I think it was because of that. You just become human and you still lead, but you lead with respect,
mhm,
and honoring the people that are around you. Cause at the end of the day, they're people too, like
mhm,
maybe this is the position, but they are people, right? So,
mhm,
Julie, I love how you're approaching all of this and what you're doing to help all these organizations. And I really feel like we need more of you in these organizations because leadership has changed. I think that the workforce has changed, right? The way people think has changed. And so, maybe that old style, what I mean by old style is like, I'm thinking about like my aunts and uncles, like back in the day, that very rigid style of leadership has to change because people don't really respond to that as much as they used to anymore, right?
Mhm.
So how does someone who is listening to you right now really get to dive deep with you and talk to you more about how we can bring you into their organizations? Because I think it'll be great for the workforce, for people working there, right? I'm sure that people are looking to be valued, but also connected to where they work, and we're missing some of that, especially with like different people that I speak to. It's missing in a lot of places. So how do we get you there?
Neena, thank you so much for inviting me to share that. So I'm really active on LinkedIn, so that's where I'm most on social media. So you can reach out to me there. I have two websites. That's CuriosityBased.com and also formsofrespect.com if you're interested in the book. And so please reach out to me. And also I have a YouTube channel with lots of tips and best practices, and so you
Oh,
can kind of
great.
get a sense of my style as well. So those are just some different ways. And we love working with organizations who want to invest in relationship building and becoming or strengthening their ability to be learning organizations.
Does it matter how big or small, or if their startups are already established?
Nope. I mean, I think the we can even just work with teams within an organization. We've worked with teams as small as three.
Oh, that's
As
great.
a
That's great.
three-person team within an
Hmm.
organization. We started there and then we started working with the whole org.
I think that's great though. I mean, it could be three, it could be two. It doesn't matter. Like if you're giving somebody some sort of seeds of wisdom and knowledge on how to do things better, before you know it, it becomes infectious. It'll start to reach everyone. It's kind of like the opposite end of that would be a bad apple, right? Like a bad
Mhm.
apple can really come in and start ruining things, but also good practices can really come in and help things.
Mhm.
And that's really welcoming. Yeah.
Mhm. And then just one other thing, we're actually in 2025, I've decided that we're going to launch a series of public workshops, of community workshops, where people can just sign up as individuals. Because normally we only work with organizations, but on a monthly basis, we'll do one workshop that's going to be an hour long. It will be virtual, real time, and so people can get a
Oh, that's
sense
so
of
good.
our experience the work and learn with other people. Because a lot of
Yeah.
it is, it's not lecturing; it's guided exercises.
Yeah, and you know what I like about that too? That community aspect is someone who's a solopreneur or just starting off their entrepreneurship, their organization, right? Like, what a great way to start off.
Mhm.
So thank you so much, Julie, for being here. I love your brain. I love everything that you're about. I love the stock you came from, your family, and all of that. And I think you're just an amazing human being. So I really appreciate you being here. Seriously, thank you.
Nina, thank you so much for this. As again, I'm a fan of your podcast, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys for hanging out with me and Julie. I love people that are out here doing something in the world that will take you to another level in your life, in your business, in your organizations, because you know what, guys, when you start to invest in yourself, say you're a CEO right now listening, because I know a lot of you do listen, and you take what Julie's teaching you, that will bleed out into your personal life. It's just going to bleed out into your friendships, bleed out into your social circles. Because when you learn something new and it's fresh and it teaches you something and it's about respect and curiosity based and all that, you are going to end up infecting people around you, and it's going to affect you in a really positive way. Now, we have enough negativity out there, guys. You know that, right? So when somebody can come in and show you how to run an organization, that now you have a team, they are with you, they will follow you. They will do what it is that needs to be done to get the work and the mission of your company done. Then you know it's worth it. So, guys, thank you for hanging out with me and Julie. I'm going to make sure to link all of our information below because it's super important to me that you guys get to connect with someone who is doing the thing in the world that is going to make us better. Thank you guys for being here. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, no sugar added.